If you are listening to this podcast, it means you're searching for someone who understands you, someone who gets you. You are yearning to be understood and to belong. Welcome to the Someone Gets Me podcast, where we help smart, talented, and sensitive people navigate an often insensitive world. I am Diane Allen, your host. My roles as ambassador, author, speaker, and intuitive mentor for bright and talented people are woven into each episode. I have the experience and knowledge to educate and inspire, as I have been there and I understand your unique intensities, sensitivities, and challenges. Welcome. Liberation through change. How to navigate changing times as a neurodivergent individual. Friends, this episode is going to be about navigating the challenging landscape of our world. The outside landscape out in the world, and also the inner landscape. Because as we live on the inside, it reflects on the outside. And I really believe that so many people are in bondage to their own thoughts, to their own fears, to the stuff, if you will. And so I want to talk about how we can liberate ourselves by making a few changes. Now, some of the changes sound simple and easy, but they're not always as I guess I could say quick to happen. So sometimes we have to have a little patience and a little bit of tenacity. But all of us neurodivergent people, we're naturally born with that ability. And of course, we've gained a lot of that ability in dealing with a neurotypical world largely. So I want to talk about some ways we can liberate ourselves from that bondage of human ignorance, from that fear-based life, from those things that hold us back so we cannot be the amazing people that we're meant to be, which causes inner upset and depression, right? And so the first thing that I want to address is that word change. I hear so many people, I even hear the voices in my head of all the different people I've worked with over the years going, but I am hard-headed. I don't change very well, or I don't like change. I'm like, well, remember that whatever you're saying and putting out there, you're going to get more of it. So I remember a quote that I heard, I don't know, years and years ago. I was in graduate school, and it was from Socrates. And the quote that was shared with us is that the only constant is change. And ever since then, it kind of, had sparked me like a little epiphany, and so ever since then, I was like, every time I'm resisting some kind of change, I remind myself that's the only constant in the world. Things are moving. The universe is ever expanding in unity and diversity and complexity. Everything is always moving. The only constant is the fact that there's change always happening in different ways, in different times. So to think that something is static and will always be the same, or to think that we can go back anywhere, is goofy. It makes no sense. Some people say, we have to go back to the way it used to be, back to the 50s, back to the 60s. Oh, I wish it was the 70s. There are times I wish it was the 70s again, because the music was amazing and I would love some more 70s music. But we can't go back to the 70s or the 60s or the 50s. You can drive back to your old childhood home if it's even still up, right? And hasn't been torn down or replaced. And you can even look at it, but it's not going to be the same. What you will feel will be the memories that you had. So the only constant is change. The idea that everything stays the same, children grow up, relationships change, everything changes. So we become liberated when we use change in our favor. And so that's what I want to talk about more of. How can we use change in our favor so we can be liberated? In other words, so we can be free of the rat race, of the trance, if you will, of the sleepwalking of popular culture. Because a lot of neurodivergent people that I work with every day will say that sometimes that just regular popular way of doing things where everybody's kind of in a trance sleepwalking doesn't work for them. In fact, it doesn't work for just about anybody who is intensely sensitive and is paying attention. So the first part that I want to address when it comes to liberating ourselves by using change in our favor is the idea of surrender. Because anytime you are resisting an external consequence or an external condition, if you will, then we get in the way of being the transformer person that we're meant to be. We stop ourselves from being able to be who we're meant to be. Whatever resists persists is the phrase here, right? So if I'm resisting, then I'm giving whatever that thing is power. So if you were standing here with me right now and I told you to put your hand up and I pushed on your hands, you would push back. So when we create more resistance, we get more resistance. So surrender is the idea of dissolving the resistance. Now, that doesn't mean we don't go after change. And it doesn't mean we want things to be better. It doesn't mean that we lay down like a wet rug. No, that's not what it means. It means that we find a different, more effective way to navigate situations and stand in our authority without creating more and more and more resistance, because all that does is create more difficulty, more walls. And generally speaking, we would like to have things flow and move in a way that works for us, right? So surrender is a really big thing. Some people think it means to give up. I don't see it that way, unless we're going to say I'm giving up resistance and I'm giving up difficulties. I mean, a few years ago, I moved to North Carolina, surprising a lot of people, me being one of them, because I just knew on a soul level, this is where I needed to be. And so that's what I did. And it has come to a really good place that I landed here. So if I would have resisted it, what would have happened? I don't know. But I know that by not resisting, something good is always happening too, right? So the other thing I want to talk about is compulsive striving. Another way we can liberate ourselves through change is with compulsive, is releasing the idea of compulsively striving, to stop always going after and looking for the next thing compulsively, because that gets in the way of our joy. It's hard to live in joy. It's hard to have attention. It's hard to be present and enjoy our lives when we're constantly striving and moving forward. I see a lot of this on social media where people are always, how much money can I make? And how can I do this? And how can I do that? Always striving. And you very, very rarely hear people talk about resting or being at peace or stillness, or knowing that when we come from our authentic center from the inside out, we are much more happy and we're much more effective. So we want to release that compulsive striving. You're not a machine. You don't always have to be going all the time. You don't. You can do your work, relax, rest at the end. That's called a Sabbath, resting after working, right? And then you can pay attention to this present moment, to being still, to doing the right thing. And that freedom that you have from not being compulsively striving and tired and exhausted allows you to feel the joy of your own being, allows you to flow in everything else that you do. And the flowing in everything else that we do is where our authentic power is. So we want to really give ourselves permission to release compulsive striving and to surrender resistance. Now, the next thing that we want to look at here is to make sure that our actions are clear and incisive and effective. And we do that when we're in the present moment. We do that when we are out of the future thinking. That's a compulsive striving. We do that when we're living in a place of surrender and we've released all that resistance. In those moments, we can take clear, incisive action. We're effective then because we're in the moment. We're not in the future and we're not in the past. We're here on this day, in this moment, taking this action. Because when we react from something, and especially if it's coming from past conditioning of the way we think or the way we act, then it takes away our ability to use our intuition because we're basically a slave to the old memory. We're basically a slave to that old past conditioning, which is why doing personal development and a lot of work on ourselves and working with others to help us grow beyond and transform beyond the old conditioning is so effective, because we want to be able to use our intuition. We want to be able to use all of our faculties in making our decisions and allowing us to be liberated and free. Our actions are much more effective when we are clear and we're in the moment. So when we come out of the present moment and we're either worrying about the past or worrying about the future, or we're in some other compulsive striving energy, we miss the opportunity to be in flow and to connect to our own joy. Now, I always look at joy as joy being our natural state. So joy is who we're really are underneath all the stuff that we've added in over the years and that the culture has. So if we're going to be joyful and we're going to let ourselves feel the joy, then it's very important that we learn how to live in the present moment and begin to release the past conditionings that no longer serve us. So it's not like we have to release everything we ever thought or did. It's not that. It's that we say, is this behavior, is this action, is this thought pattern serving me? Is it working in today's world? If it's not working in my life today, then I want to look at making changes. And usually surrender and surrendering compulsive thinking and striving are a really good place to start. So whenever I run into something and then there's a jam or there's like resistance or I feel that rub, I call it, the first thing I look at and the first thing I ask myself on the inside is, what is the past conditioning here that I'm bumping up against? Because my current adult self, we've been doing a lot of work over the years. And so I might have a belief system that works, but there's an old conditioning that's kind of hiding underneath. So when you feel the rub, you begin to start asking those questions. And then the combination of surrendering resistance and releasing all the compulsive striving and allowing yourself to be in the moment and joyful set you up to be the perfect alchemist. Now, I love the idea of being an alchemist. I think I loved being an alchemist before I even knew what one was when I was younger, because alchemists transmute the base metal like lead and base things into something beautiful like gold or silver. But you can look at this in your own life beyond just metal. You can be an alchemist of fear-based or low vibration, grief, pain, fear, thoughts, and raise your consciousness. You can be more and more enlightened. So you can take suffering and turn it into consciousness or awareness. You can take disastrous thinking and dead on the highway syndrome and all of that heavy, just really difficult emotions and thoughts and turn them into enlightenment and joy. Because when we're living in a place where we're free of compulsive striving and we're surrendering the resistance and we're living in joy, it sets us up to be able to transmute these lower and sometimes not so desirable ways of living into something beautiful. So not everything starts out beautiful. It gets transmuted sometimes, like sand and oyster turns into a pearl, right? So there's all kinds of things in the natural world that start out not so, maybe not bad, but not so great. And then they turn into something beautiful because alchemy is involved, transmuting things. And you, my friend, you, my neurodivergent friend, you have this ability within you. Whether anybody has told you or not, or even if you believe it or not, I believe it. I know it to be true. I've been working with people now for decades. And largely the people who come to me to work with me don't see these things in them yet. I see them in them, usually in the first conversation, but sometimes we need somebody on the outside to help reflect back to us in a way that we can understand who we are and how we can be liberated, how we can free ourselves from the fear and the restriction that happens, so we can allow the change that's going on to work in our favor. And being an alchemist is one of the most powerful ways to do it. And you, my friend, have these things. You have these abilities within you, even if you don't know it. Now, some people know they have the ability, and it might be you, but they don't use it. I know that for many years I didn't use mine very much because people made fun of me, and that hurt my sensitive self. Now it's more accepted. And now if people make fun of me, I know I'm on the right track. So it's a different thing because I've worked on myself. So as you work on yourself and you free yourself from past conditioning, then you can end up having a completely different life where you're much more free and much more liberated. So we want to continue to be the alchemist. Then what we want to do is we want to begin to bring an end to our inner conflict. And by bringing an end to our inner conflict, we affect the outer conflict of the world. We want to bring an end to the dreadful enslavement that we have to incessant thinking. Let me say that again. We want to bring an end to the dreadful enslavement that we have to incessant thinking, where we are always thinking, always pondering, always figuring. It's okay to take a break. You do not have to be compulsive in these things. In fact, if you want to be liberated, there's a time of integration, there's a time of thinking, there's a time of doing, and there's a time of stillness and peace. I had one client who said, I don't know about this peace thing. It feels kind of boring. And I'm like, because you've never really felt peace. Peace is not boring. It's very active. It's got a beauty and an energy and an essence that transcends words. So we want to bring an end to the enslavement that neurodivergent people often have to this idea that we're incessantly having to think and process and figure all the time. It's okay to end that inner conflict. It's okay to end that inner dialogue that says you have to push, push, push. Because enlightenment, transformation, peace, liberation, all of those things come when we begin to surrender and we release this compulsive striving like we're machines, because we are not. And neurodivergent people are motivated by different things than neurotypical people often. Neurodivergent people have a sensitivity level that is very qualitatively different than their peers. Neurodivergent people have a different worldview, have a different experience. I kind of liken it like if you're going to see a movie, and some people would see the movie through their reality and it would be like a black and white little small TV. And other people would have like maybe a color TV. But a neurodivergent person is in a 3D surround sound with the chairs moving and things, right? It's the same movie, completely different experience. So you become liberated and enlightened when you let change work in your favor and realize that the way you're going to do it as a neurodivergent person is different than other people. Neither way is wrong. Both are correct. What matters is we align the way we do things with who we are. So you want to align how you approach these things with who you are and how you're built. Because your true freedom from compulsive thinking and negativity and being a slave to the past or a slave to the future and having all these things be a psychological need to feel like you're alive, those are the things that we want to free ourselves from so we can have our freedom, is to be free of compulsive thinking and compulsive striving. We want to be free of negativity and the bondage of the past and the bondage of what we think the future should be. And we want to allow ourselves to get rid of being enslaved by these old things that don't work. And most of all, we want to free ourselves from the psychological need to have these things. See, some people wear the striving or the resistance, all these things I've been talking about, like a badge. They've made it part of their identity markers. And so I see it a lot with, I'm not a victim, I'm a victor. Well, if you're saying you're a victor to not be the victim, that's progress, but that's not what I'm talking about. If you're going to be liberated from that thing that you first called yourself a victim of, and now you're a victor, the liberation happens when we release the resistance and the striving, and we release the psychological need to even be a victor. What if you were able to look at the story, look at the situation, look at the event, no matter how painful or glorious, and say, well, that was a really interesting part of my life. And then gave yourself permission to move on and release the power of the story. You don't release the story, you release the power it has. I had a client just yesterday say, it seems like I'm a different person now. Like I can look back at things I did 20 years ago, or even this person was saying 5 years ago, and they go, I'm different now. This person's been working with me now for several years. And as a mentor, the work is always evolving. So I don't come from a place of pathology or what's wrong or diagnosing. I come from a place of, I've been doing this a long time and I can help show you how to be even more amazing. You can let that more amazingness of you show up in the world, right? And so this person was saying to me that they that they're actually able now to have freedom to deal with life, solve problems, and do things that matter instead of being trapped in this always having to be better or strive or push. And it all comes because we learn how to surrender the resistance. We learn how to take action from the moment and know that we can change any kind of suffering into some kind of great consciousness, into something good. The one big barrier that a lot of people have is denial. And the denial comes out in statements like, it will never happen to me, or I'm not like them, or I don't do it that way. Well, in some cases, a part of that might be a little bit true, but the belief about I am different than others and therefore can't get there, don't have the ability to do it, that's where the error lies. So everybody is neurodivergent in some way, and we are all the same but different. So yes, as a neurodivergent person, especially when my ADHD is going and I'm tired, sometimes it's a little trickier to navigate these things. But other people who it may not be tricky for them to navigate them still have to navigate them. We all just do it a little bit differently. So we want to realize that when our brain starts saying, not me, that is an inner resistance. That is the hallmark of something or someone, of an old belief system trying to stop your progress. And a lot of times it's unconscious. A lot of times it's just so automatic we don't realize it. So it's not about blaming ourselves or beating ourselves up. It's about gaining more and more awareness, about going, look at that. How is that affecting me? How is that landing on me? And what do I want to do with it? Because this whole episode is predicated on the idea that most people want to be more and more free from the inside out, free in how we think, free in how we operate, free in our ideas and those kinds of things. And in order to be free, we have to be willing to liberate ourselves by making changes and using change in our favor. So when you hear your brain say, I want to go back to fill in the blank, or not me, right? Or any of those things that are old news, that is an either conscious or unconscious part of you trying to stop you from living your best life. Because we cannot go back, my friends. There is no going back. That's not how the world is designed. It's designed to continue to move forward and expand in more beauty and more amazement. So as we drop that inner resistance and we release the need to be compulsively striving, and we get rid of being enslaved by our brains, constantly thinking all the time, then we can be free. Yes, but Diane, I'm always thinking. I am too. But do you direct your thoughts? Do you have them faced toward peace and love and kindness and beauty? Or is you're striving and you're thinking all about what you have to do or what you ought to do or some fear-based thing? There are lots of ways to look at it. And so this episode and this time, I thank you for spending with me. And I'd like you to remember that the more you practice any of these pieces of becoming an alchemist and freeing yourself, you take more and more steps toward your own personal liberation. And in that, your critical thinking and the beauty of who you are as a creative being, as a sensitive being, can show up more fully in the world. And that, I believe, is one of the big reasons why we're here, all of us, to show up more fully. So as always, you can always contact me through the show notes, set up a call. I'm happy to talk to you about any topic you want to. And I want to remind you that you don't want to be enslaved anymore. You don't want to be caught in that inner prison. So it's time to take some action. And everyone needs to take action, me included. We all need to be taking action in these areas so that we can become more and more free. So friends, remember to keep your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a purpose. So go out there and liberate yourself by making friends with change. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, this is Diane saying, be well. Are you tired of searching for someone to understand you? Join our Facebook group, Someone Gets Me. In this group, you will be able to connect with others who are intense, sensitive, smart, and talented. I share my insights and teachings, and you can connect with others in a real, authentic, safe forum. So join us today. Someone Gets Me.